Welcome everyone, happy Mother's Day. So glad you're here. We've got a special treat for you today. Allison and Kim Harris are team preaching through a sermon called, But If Not. And I can't wait to hear it. If you want prayer anytime throughout service, go ahead and hit the live prayer button at the bottom of the video. Our team would love to pray with you. If you want to take ownership of this service, of your church, then hit the give button at the top right of the screen. All right, now let's get into service.
Your love is Chasing after your heart, chasing after your heart, chasing after you. Chasing after your heart, chasing after your heart, chasing after you. Oh, chasing after your heart, chasing after your heart, chasing after you. Oh God, we're running, running. We hunger and we thirst for more of you. We are chasing your heart. Our souls are longing, longing. We search the world and nothing else will do. We are chasing your heart.
Mom's gone for the day. Apparently, I need a babysitter. A tearaway director for operations. I have some questions. Can I have a copy for a resume?
What's a resume?
What do you wear for snack time?
I prefer prunes and whole grain crackers. Well, here's a snack menu for you to choose from.
How many you can go up and down the stairs when you're birthday?
Doll face, I could probably do 4.
No, like that. We don't have like a vacation time.
I was just wondering.
That's not even that time. Optional or mandatory? Mandatory.
Well, happy Mother's Day to all you moms out there, and thank you so much for choosing to spend at least part of your Mother's Day joining us here at The Crossing. So whether you're at one of our physical locations all over the region, or if you're joining us from online or .tv, or if you're part of The Crossing inside, we are just so honored that we get to be here with you today. My name is Kim, and this is Allison, and we are so thrilled that we have the opportunity today to share with you and just celebrate Mother's Day with you. And my hope and prayer for you today, if you're a mom, is that you'll get a nap, that you'll get to go to the bathroom by yourself, that maybe you'll get to watch your favorite show instead of Paw Patrol or Daniel Tiger or Peppa Pig. I don't know what it is at your house. It's Daniel Tiger at our house. But that's my hope for you for Mother's Day. This is my second year as a mother, so it's my second Mother's Day, and I honestly don't really remember a whole lot about my first Mother's Day, and I feel like that's something that nobody really tells you about or prepares you for in like parenting classes or in parenting books that you read. They don't tell you that memory loss is a big part of being a mom. And I'm not really sure if that memory loss happens because you're just so exhausted from lack of sleep and from like all of the new things that you have to think about all the time, or if it's because all of your ability to create new memories is taken up by learning all of the lyrics to Daniel Tiger songs. Sometimes my husband and I, we actually have, he is like told me something in a Daniel Tiger song before, so I think it happens to dads too, but it's pretty funny. There's a lot of things about motherhood that you don't expect. Another thing that I have experienced in my first 16, 17 months of being a mom is there's a lot of like Facebook things involved with being a mom. I didn't know how many Facebook groups I was going to be a part of, but I actually counted the other day, and I'm in 18 Facebook groups specifically dedicated to moms with young children, and I don't really actually know how I got to be a part of these groups. That may be part of the memory loss problem, but somehow I ended up in all these groups. Some of you invited me. I know you're out there. Some of you, it's on you that I'm in these groups, but being in these groups you start having this overwhelming like confidence that you can make stuff like Play-Doh or slime or laundry detergent or like your own sunscreen. You just like, I don't know what happens in these groups, but you start having this like overconfidence that you can make stuff. So the other day I made these Lego fruit snacks from scratch. And it was like, oh, it's this super cute Pinteresty recipe. It's got fruit and agave nectar. So I was like, yeah, I'll do this. I'll buy some unflavored gelatin mix, which is terrible. And I made these fruit snacks, and they were awful. And I fed them to my daughter, and she was like, okay, whatever. But they were terrible. So, and now I'm going to get like 14 Facebook messages. They're like, you've got to try my fruit snack recipe. It's better. I'm not going to. I'm just going to throw in the towel with those. That's just part of motherhood. I'm just not going to do it. But there's just a lot of things I think about being a mom, at least in the last year of my life, that I have realized I had no idea how to imagine or what to expect about being a mom. And I think so much of being a mom is just not having any idea what it's going to be like or what to expect.
We all have expectations. I have them, you have them. They're part of life. We expect that we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to control it. It's going to be timed. I'm going to spend 0.25 years here and 0.31 years here, and it's all going to be fine, and I've got it mapped out, my life from 0 to 100, and I'm good. Okay? Now, then expectations start to crumble. And maybe they crumble in small ways, and maybe they just flat blow up in front of you. But we all have had them, and we've all been experienced by things that didn't exactly go right. Expectations are not guaranteed. I think if I would have known that as a young mom, I could have actually slept 5 minutes longer, that I wasn't going to be turned in for something, or I wasn't going to get in trouble by God for something, or I wasn't, and the expectations would just relax a little. Maybe you've experienced some expectations that didn't go your way. Maybe you expected to conceive and to carry, and that didn't turn out. Or that isn't happening, or every step you've tried and every dollar you spent is not working. And you don't understand. That was an expectation you thought you were going to have. Maybe you became a mom at an unexpected time. It wasn't in your timetable, it was far off in the distance, and now here you are. Maybe your delivery was not what you expected. It was not like the movies, and it was not like the classes, and it didn't go anything like you planned. What if you had your child and you lost your child? That is definitely an expectation nobody wants or has. And then there it is. And that just hurts beyond hurt. Maybe you're raising your grandchildren and you thought, whoa, I didn't sign up for this, did my part, all done, got them out, and now I have grandchildren. And now they live with me, and now I'm raising them. And you're having that expectation going, whoa, that's what happens with expectations. I want to introduce you to 3 men. Yes, it's Mother's Day, and we're talking about 3 men. I know, hang with me, it's going to work. In the book of Daniel, Old Testament book, these 3 men, their life was very normal, very controlled, very good. They grew up in Israel. They went to school. They were becoming very good students in understanding the books of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Life was good. They knew where their grandfather was, their father was. They know what's going to happen to them in the next 20 years. Everything was fine. And all of a sudden, here comes this big bad king called Nebuchadnezzar, and he comes into Israel and he lays waste. He just takes it over. And they are taken away as slaves. Now that's not on the expectation list. And so they have a new normal. They don't get to decide anything. They don't get to control anything. They don't get to do anything other than what they're told to do, whether they like it or not. Except for they knew who the Lord was. And so they still kept some of what they believed, even when their expectations were taken from them and they lost control. I want to read to you in Daniel 3. what it says. Now, this is Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was a king of this huge amount of land and people, and he thought he was a god. That was the way it was. If you ever watched the movie 300, you're just thinking, oh, that's him, okay? The guy was a maniac, but he was powerful. Now, this is him talking. Now, when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, and he made it in his image, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to defend ourselves before you in this matter." Well, right there, that insubordination should have gotten them in big trouble. But they go on. "If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. But if not." There have been times in our life where it did happen the way we thought it was going to happen. We're just kind of upset about it. We're wondering why. We're not getting the answers. But there is a but if not. These men are obedient. They don't get to control what's in front of them or what happened back behind them. They're only in control of what they are as a people. And they are letting God set the expectations even when they don't understand them. Obedience when you don't know the outcome. Let's say that again. Obedience when you don't know the outcome. They knew that if their expectations led to death, they would still be obedient. If the outcome is bad, they are obedient. If the outcome is good, they're obedient. Their job was obedience.
I love the way that Allison set this story up for us because it gives us a picture of what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would have experienced in that moment where they had to have enough faith to say, "We know that our God is able to deliver us and that he will rescue us from your hand, O king." We see that they have great faith, that they show obedience, like Allison talked about, by saying that we're not going to bow down to these idols and this gold image that you've set up. I think at some point in all of our lives, regardless of whether or not you're a parent, you'll come to a point in your life where you have the opportunity to be obedient. You have the opportunity to make a statement of faith where you say, "God, I trust you to provide a way out for me." Which is what they said. "We trust that God will rescue us from your hand, O king." And then they say, "But even if he doesn't, we won't bow down. Even if we walk to our death, we're not going to worship your images of gold." I think the hardest part in this "but if not" statement is when the not part of that statement is what ends up happening. So I want us to walk with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego through their story and see what happens and see what happened when the not part of that "but if not" statement actually did end up happening. So they had just said this to the king. They'd said, "We're not going to bow down," and they had to go to this furnace. So they had walked with God a long time. Like Allison said, they knew who God was. They had relationship with him. They knew what he was capable of, that he was a big God, that he had created them and everything in the world. So they knew that he was capable of anything. So maybe they thought that he would change King Nebuchadnezzar's heart after they made this brave declaration of faith, after they said, "We're not going to bow down because we believe our God is big enough to rescue us from your hand." Maybe they thought that King Nebuchadnezzar would have a change of heart and say, "I'm so impressed, I'm so in awe of the God that you believe in that I'm not going to throw you into the furnace." But that's not what happened. What actually happened was that he became even more angry and more furious at their insubordination, at the sheer bravery it took in them. He became angry at them rather than impressed. But they didn't bow down. They continued to walk in obedience to God, even though they knew they were facing death. And maybe they thought that the furnace would somehow miraculously not light. They knew that God created the world, that he created even the capacity for fire and a furnace. So maybe they thought he would provide and deliver them through not allowing the furnace to be lit. But that's not what happened. What happened was the furnace was actually heated 7 times hotter than it would normally have been heated. So hot, in fact, that the men who were guarding the furnace, the people who worked for King Nebuchadnezzar, were actually killed just by being in proximity to it. So they're watching this happen. They're watching these guards die by just being near it. And they didn't bow down. They continued to walk in obedience. Maybe they thought that there would be some kind of break in the guards' watch, that they would be able to escape because they weren't being held in that moment. But Scripture tells us that they were bound tightly, that they were wearing a lot of garments, that they had been tied together. There's no way that they could have escaped. But they didn't bow down. They continued to walk in obedience. And maybe they thought as they stood on the edge of that furnace, being ready to fall into it, being pushed in by King Nebuchadnezzar's men, maybe they thought that there would be some kind of giant flood and the rain would put out the fire. Or maybe they thought that there would be an army that would overtake King Nebuchadnezzar and his men. Or maybe they thought God would provide a way out for them so they didn't have to go into the furnace. But that's not what happened. Verse 23 says, "And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace." At any point in this story, these 3 men, or even one of them, could have made the decision to save their own lives. I want us to notice that because there are going to be times in our lives when we have the opportunity to have faith and we make that statement of faith, but then we have to carry that out in obedience. So at any point, any of them could have said, "This is too difficult. I'm too afraid. This is too hot of a fire. I'll bow down." But they didn't. They continued to walk in obedience. For Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, obedience was a conscious decision that they made every single step along the way. Then verses 24 and 25 happened, which say, "Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet." After they had fallen into the furnace, he's watching this happen. He leaps to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?" They replied, "Certainly, O king." He said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like the Son of God's." Later in this story, after he realizes that they've been saved, after he realizes that they were not consumed, that their God is as big and powerful as they said that he was, he calls them out of the furnace, and the people around say that they couldn't even smell fire on their clothes and that their hair wasn't singed. The fire had harmed them in no way. What I want us to know here is they may have expected God to show up in certain ways at certain points in this story to deliver them. They said they believed that he was capable of it and that he would rescue them. But he did not deliver them from the furnace. He went with them to it. Psalm 23 is arguably one of the most well-known pieces of scripture. If you're not familiar with church, or if maybe this is your first time here in a long time, or maybe the Bible is not something that you're terribly familiar with, chances are you've heard part of Psalm 23. And I think that what David, who wrote this psalm, communicates gives us a really good picture of what these 3 men might have been feeling. This isn't what they said, but this is something that they might have been feeling. Psalm 23 says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Some versions say that I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me by still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me on paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for he is with me. His rod and his staff, they comfort me. Even though they walked through the literal valley of the shadow of death, they were walking to their death. they feared no evil. Even when we walk through the darkest valleys, the hottest furnace, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. In my life, I've had various times where I feel like I've had an opportunity to walk in obedience with God, and I've done that with varying degrees of success and obedience. And one of those times was about 3 years ago. My husband Ben and I, before we were even married, we both felt like we were called to be foster parents. We had some friends who were foster parents, and we both felt called to that as a ministry, as something that we felt like we were created to do. And so after we had been married for a year, we decided to go through the classes and get licensed. And every step, even in the deciding process of that, felt like a step of obedience, because we knew that it was going to be a big job and a potentially scary job at some times. So every step that we took in that process felt like a step of obedience for us, felt like we were saying, God, we trust you no matter the outcome. So we got licensed, and then we just waited. And then finally, one Wednesday afternoon, I got a call from Ben while I was at work that said, we're going to have a little boy tomorrow, and we're going to go drive north of Macomb and pick him up from a McDonald's. and that is what happened. We were not parents on Wednesday, and then we were parents on Thursday. And if you're familiar with the foster care system, and if you are a foster parent, you know how quickly your life can change. And that's what happened. And so every step in that process, we felt like we couldn't provide what we needed for this little boy. And God had to provide it, and he did. He provided everything we could have ever possibly needed, whether it be clothes or daycare or formula or just even our capacity to parent him. He provided it. So we continue to walk in this path thinking that God was providing what we expected. Our caseworker started asking us questions about adoption and whether or not that's something that we believe to be part of this story for this little boy. And we were so excited because we already loved him so much. And then one Tuesday morning, it all changed when I got a call from the caseworker, and she said, he's going home this week. And in that one moment, that's all it took for me to forget all of the time we had walked with God the whole time. While things were going my way, the way that I wanted them and I expected them, I was obedient in my attitude and in my actions. But then suddenly, when it wasn't what I had planned for or what I wanted or what I expected, it was like I had suddenly completely forgot that God had been walking with me the entire time. I had a friend snap me out of it, and she said, Kim, don't you know that God loves him more than you do? Don't you know that God is walking with him just as much as he's walking with you? There's a song on our New Crossing worship album called Still, and in it, it really addresses and captures some of the realities of being a parent, but also of how God looks at us as he is our Father. In the bridge of the song, it says, in the valley, you've got me. In the thunder, you've got me. And I know that the people who wrote this song, the worship pastors who wrote this song, are parents. And they said that they were imagining how when something scary happens to one of their kids, they pick them up and they say, I've got you. Daddy's got you. Have you ever done that? If you're a parent, you pick up your kid when they're scared and you just hug them and you say, I've got you. Mama's got you. This song is written as a way to express that God's got us. Even in the valley, you've got me. Even in the thunder, you've got me. Even in my sickness, you've got me. These are the words to the song. Even in the chaos, you've got me. What is that in your life? Even in loss, you've got me. Even in the chaos of motherhood, of parenthood, you've got me. Even in the moments when you yelled and you didn't mean to, or you said things that you can't take back, or maybe you gave up a child that you wish you never had, or maybe you had to say goodbye to a child who was taken from you. He's got you. When you have to say goodbye and it doesn't feel fair, he's got you. Mother's Day is a joyous time to celebrate, but it's also really hard sometimes. Because sometimes it reminds us of all the ways that we haven't lived up to our own expectations. Maybe your life hasn't lived up to what you thought it would look like. I don't know what your life looks like. I don't know the trials that you're experiencing. But God does, because he has walked with you every step along the way. He has walked with you through every valley, through every furnace, and he's got you. And what I want you to know is that he has walked with you, and he is keeping you from your clothes smelling like fire and from your hair being singed, and he is keeping you from being consumed.
He's got you. It's kind of the definition of faithfulness. God is faithful. He always has been. He always will be. He always is. He never changes. He is faithful. Faithfulness, we've talked about expectations. We've talked about being obedient. But at the pillar of this is God's faithfulness. We've been in Daniel. We've been in Psalm. Now we're going to go to Romans, where Paul talks to us. We're going to read a verse in Romans 11:17, one of my favorite verses. This is Paul talking to a group of people just like you and I. And it says, if some of the branches have been broken off, and you, meaning us, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root. Jesus is the olive root. He wants us adopted in. He wants us to choose him. He will be faithful when we choose him. He's faithful even when we don't choose him, but he wants us to choose him. He is like the root, and he has grafted us in so that we are all family. Maybe Jesus met you, or you met Jesus, after your mothering days were pretty much on the other side. And you sure wish you could go back and change some things. And the haunting of what you did or didn't do is just overwhelming you. He's faithful. He can do miracles in your life, in your children's life, when you're obedient and you allow him to set the expectations. He's called you into the area in the same way to be like him. He grafted us in. What if he's asking you to graft others in? What if there's a child that needs a father, that needs a mother? I think that fostering and adopting mirrors the image of Christ in more ways than we can even imagine. What if he is calling you to that? What if you were the person who was fostered and who was adopted? And now because of that family, you have a relationship with Jesus. You chose him. They trained you. They taught you. They taught you to love. They showed themselves an example. I think that Romans 11, we are grafted in. If we are all adopted into his family. He's faithful to you if you're in a blended family. It's difficult. The lines aren't as black and white as they used to be or they once were. He is faithful. Listen to him. If you don't know him, get to know him. He has lots of things to tell you on how to do a blended family so well. He can do that. He is intensely aware if you're a single mother. You have to be both mother and father to these children. You have to set examples when you can't or don't want to or don't have the energy. You don't have you don't have two incomes, you have one income. You have to do everything the two into one. You are not alone. If you are a single mother, you are not alone. He is faithful. He always has been. He always will be. He continues to be. You can trust him to help you be both mother and father to those children. Let Jesus define what a parent, what a mother is to you. If you're a grandparent, he can do this. You let him show obedience. Let him set the expectations. And he will make a family and adoption the way that he intends us to be. We're moving to a time of decision.
Psalm 23 paints a beautiful picture of what it means to walk with God through all the seasons of our lives. Regardless of whether or not you're a parent, at some point you'll run into a dark valley. You may have an intimate personal relationship with Christ already, and you've experienced Him walking with you through those dark valleys. You know firsthand what it feels like for Him to be your lifeline, to experience His comfort and peace despite dark circumstances. Or maybe you do have a relationship with Christ, but you're looking around at your life and it looks nothing like you planned or imagined. You feel lost and overwhelmed by your circumstances and the unexpected place you find yourself in, like you'll be consumed if God doesn't deliver you from it soon. Know that God is walking right there with you, and He's not surprised or caught off guard by the things you're experiencing. He will walk with you through whatever the furnace is in your life. And when you come out on the other side, those around you will be amazed that your clothes don't smell like smoke and not even your hair is a little bit singed. And if you don't have a personal relationship with Jesus, if you've never started that intimate relationship with Christ, He is offering you an opportunity right now to be adopted as His son or daughter, to graft you into His forever family. Beyond offering you peace and comfort as His child, He offers you the promise of an eternity spent with Him. In these next moments, you have the chance to respond to what God is doing in your heart. Whether that's taking the time to praise and thank Him for walking with you through those dark valleys and dark periods of your life, or asking Him to bring you comfort as you navigate unexpected circumstances now, or starting an intimate personal relationship with Him for the very first time. Let's go to Him now.
We see the tragedy and beauty of the cross. We feel the mystery and wonder of your love. Lord, we marvel at the gift you gave to us in the spilling of your blood. The spilling of your blood. We see the tragedy and beauty of the cross. We feel the mystery and wonder of your love. Lord, we marvel at the gift you gave to us in the spilling of your blood, to bring us healing. You were wounded to show us mercy. You bore the curse that we deserve to win our pardon, to buy our freedom. You chose the cross, oh, the power of the cross. You are the Savior who has conquered sin and death. We live in victory and hope because of this. Our risen Lord, you bring us back to life again. Oh, we come alive again, to bring us healing. You were wounded to show us mercy. You bore the curse that we deserve to win our pardon, to buy our freedom. You chose the cross, oh, the power of the cross. We stand because of what you've done through the power of the cross. Live to see your kingdom come by the power of the cross. All we need and all we want is the power in the cross. When my heart is tired and I'm crippled by the trials all around me, though I can't see, I believe. When my spirit's crushed, 'cause the pain is just too much, and even when it hurts, and you feel far from me, I believe. You will not abandon me. You will not abandon me. Lover of my soul, you won't let me go. I believe. When my shame tells me that my sin is just too deep, you don't love me when I feel empty, I believe. 'Cause you will not abandon me. You will not abandon me. Lover of my soul, you won't let me go. I believe. 'Cause you will not abandon me. You will not abandon me. Lover of my soul, you won't let me go. I believe. Jesus, you have me. Jesus, you have me. Jesus, you have me. And I'm yours. Oh, Jesus, you love me. Jesus, you love me. Jesus, you love me. And I'm yours. Oh, you will not abandon me. You will not abandon me. Lover of my soul, you won't let me go. I believe. 'Cause you will not abandon me. 'Cause you will not abandon me. Lover of my soul, you won't let me go. I believe. Oh, lover of my soul, you won't let me go. I believe.
No one showed more obedience, more love, despite the consequences than Jesus on the cross. It was his sacrifice that gave us the opportunities that we have today. We remember that obedience by taking communion. It's a piece of bread and a cup of juice, a reminder of his body and his blood poured out for the forgiveness of our sins. Together as one church, let's spend some time in prayer with him right now. Thank you so much for joining with us today. If you stuck around this far, let me just say thank you. We want this service to be your service, a way for you to connect with us and, more importantly, with God every single week. If you haven't already, hit the give button at the top of the screen and start being a difference maker in our online community. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me by emailing joeyh@thecrossing.net. I'd love to answer any questions that you have. Once again, thanks for joining with us, and I'll see you next week.